call the Twilight Zone.
Steve Kerr, and you look at Steph and Clay, and even Draymond with his lack of performance.
He's at 2 in a row, 7 points for him. The twirling Doncic, melting into the defense. The front Curry strikes. Swing, fly ball, well hit left center. Robert Acuna has homer. Rookie rushing record for the Steelers.
Look, he came into this game averaging 3.67 yards per carry. 42nd out of 49 qualified rushers.
Freeze to begin the third quarter. It has been incredible. Here he comes again. Oh, goodness. And a Greek basketball god. And he was a great guy to teach because
What is up, Rally Towel fam? Good evening. Welcome to the show. We've got a fairly short show for you tonight. We're gonna recap the Super Bowl, talk a little baseball and basketball, and then we're just gonna kind of spitball. So whatever you guys have, throw it at us. But gentlemen, how we doing tonight?
It's good, man. All's good. It's we were just talking about it a little bit before we got on here. We're kind of in a weird time of sports because now the high of the NFL season starting to really wear off. Now that we're 3 days removed from the Super Bowl, now pitchers and catchers reported yesterday or today, depending on who your slice is in baseball, and we're right at the NBA All-Star break here. So we're kind of in that weird period of sports where there's not a lot of action. It's just mostly speculation across all sports right now.
Right? Yeah, I think your dog behind you agrees.
Yeah, if there's anything,
that's the sports world mood right now.
No, man, you're right. It's
like
you kind of have a little bit of that itch right after the fact, and that's why I think the Super Bowl is one of the greatest, sporting events, is because there just is this, overwhelming buildup. You could argue for my money that championship weekend is probably the best weekend of sports when you have both the AFC and the NFC championship game going on.
Yeah.
But man, there's just something about the Super Bowl that just hits differently. So, how did you guys spend your Sunday? How was Sunday and how'd you guys do on the old apps, and you have a good time?
Yeah, we had a great time. We drank a lot of beer.
Yeah, a lot of beer. A lot of beers were consumed. There was never an empty hand from, let's call it 2:30 until 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
Oof, that's a good start.
Yeah. So as far as cuisine went, everything was delicioso. I think the real winner, and I'm sure Bobby will agree with me, is my wife made homemade Cheddar Bay biscuits. Like,
oh God, I will tell you, I worked there and I ate one and I was blown away. I was like, this is because I've had a lot of people make them and like say, oh, it made the Cheddar Bay biscuits, and I'm like, great, they're not going to be as good, and they usually never are. And then these were just absolutely amazing. Best ones I ever had that weren't at Red Lobster. They were great.
It's good.
Tasted like the real shit.
High praise.
It's good. And the best part is I've got to enjoy them, every day afterwards with, unfortunately, I think I probably transmitted too many beers when I should have had some of that third quarter chili, as we talked about on the podcast last week. I was just drinking beers instead. But the good news is I've had Cheddar Bay biscuits and chili 3 days in a row, and I mean, I've never felt better.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I'm still rocking Super Bowl leftovers right now, and I'm starting to feel it. You know?
Oh yeah. So I think that's it. I was just going to ask you too. I want to hear about the town cuisine and how that went over with the.
Oh, audience. I mean, I don't think there was a single, and obviously other people brought some food too. There was not a single thing that was put on anybody's plate that was not good. There wasn't a single person that left my house hungry. I got, you got a bunch of leftover beers from having people over, so we're enjoying some weekend vibes from Mr. Mike Conley, who was a two-time square champion on Sunday. So congratulations to Mike Conley, and thanks again to everyone who participated in the Super Bowl squares for Rally Towel, and obviously the Parkinson's organization. But it was great, man. We had Philly cheesesteak, basically like open face, so almost like a crostini kind of deal, but a little like not as fancy. It was just like open face French, like a baguette with Just so that way you don't really you want, like we were saying, you want the smaller versions of the food, right? We're not serving up whole cheesesteaks.
Yeah, everything is an eighth of a version of what it should be.
When you got 8 other things you got to put on your plate.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, the pulled pork sliders with the King's Hawaiian roll. It's got to be the King's Hawaiian roll.
Yeah.
We had some people bring over some, nacho dip. One of my buddies made a pepperoni roll, like a circle, which was oh my god, so good.
It's very similar to a stromboli, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like
it's a circle,
it's delicious.
Right?
Exactly.
It's like a pull and eat kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That was delicious. And then the surprise hit. I think somebody somebody made the what do you call it? Like mud, like the pudding and Oreo crumb, like the gummy worms in it. And
mud pie.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
that was good. That was a nice little dessert. So, I mean, all in all, the spread and the food was delicious. We had the full bar set up, and we have like one of those inflatable snack stadiums that we use as like we actually use it as a cooler where you just dump ice in it and put all the beers in it.
Right.
You can obviously put food in it if you want to as well, but we had enough food out, so it was great, man. I did the Monday off, so after the game I just watched good hour and a half of post game, and I bought a couple cigars, and I had a cigar in the Three Seasons room while just going through the bets, and it was a good little Sunday, man.
It's a good Sunday. You're a smart.
I wish I would have taken Monday off.
You have to do it next year.
I powered through. I powered through and went to work on Monday. Instantly regretted it. Woke up Tuesday and was like, "Today is not the day." And then I ended up taking Tuesday off. Which was actually very productive for me, and I feel 1,000 times better now that I took that off after.
There you go.
Needed something, man. We had like over 50 beers in the fridge, and I think there were 6 left after it was all said and done. So we put in some work.
Yeah, Mary's a queen. She's so good at it.
Mary,
she could booze.
It's one thing when the Super Bowl starts at 6:30, right? Like that's not a terrible time, but when you have an extended halftime. And even 6:30, that ball didn't kick off till about 6:50.
I know.
6:55. So really, it's a long event, and I don't think there's a single person that takes off the Monday after that regrets it. So just trust me. Next year, do yourself a favor and just enjoy the greatest day off of all time.
I have to take a half day on Friday. If I didn't have to leave at like 2:00 on Friday, I would have taken the day off easy. But I have to leave. I got to get down to Cincinnati. I got to be down there by like 5:30 on Friday. So I had to make the decision. Am I gonna deal with this pain on Monday? Which somebody walked by my desk and looked at me for a second. They're like, "I'll just come back later." I was like, "Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that." Because I walked in at 8:20 with like a bag of donuts, like those little mini donuts. And 2 monsters, and I just sat down at my desk and cracked it opened the donut, just gorging myself.
I don't know how you ate anything before noon.
I had to get back to life. I had to, and the only way I know how to get back to life when being hungover, if I can't stop at a McDonald's, is those little mini donuts. For some reason, it like flips the switch on me.
That's a move, because I can't do the like Monster or like even like I love coffee. I have to, like, when I'm hungover like that, it's nothing but water in my system until maybe some Gatorade or some kind of like rehydration thing like that. But if I have anything like Monster or coffee, I think I'm just draining whatever water is left in my body out.
Yeah. Well, look, here's the thing: is that like by 2:00, my bones are sore. Right? That's the trade-off you get. Is that you're right? You've already pulled so much water out of your system from, copious amounts of booze, and then you top that off with another 400, 500 milligrams of caffeine, and then you're out of liquids, you're out of hydration. So the key is to sprinkle in a little liquid IV at the beginning, and I'm talking liquid IV in the Monster, boys. I'm not talking about putting it in a water.
That is psychopathic behavior.
Yeah, well, it works.
He's like, you put some of the Monster, and then you just fucking zoot the rest of it.
Yeah, then you just roll up the $1 bill that you have in your wallet and just take it to the face.
Snooter afterwards. Yeah, it's 2 sips of the Monster, liquid IV in there, give it a little, and just down the hatch. and then you open up the second one so you don't think about it, and you're just, I'm good by 2 hours later. I'm fine.
I think that Monday after the Super Bowl, everybody is like in bed at least an hour early, though. Even me who took it off, I was like 9. I was like, I'm usually up till about 10:30, 11 o'clock until I'm like in bed. 9 o'clock, I'm like, fucking throw the projector on. Let's watch an episode of something. Doze off.
No,
yeah,
I mean,
it's crazy.
It was a tall cup of coffee, water, and then Arby's for lunch. Just something
interesting.
I had the Monday off, so I did the. I didn't do a whole lot, and then at about 2 o'clock, I'm like, I'm gonna have a Bloody Mary.
Stay there, then.
And that's the only thing I drank all day. But I was like, I just want like a little,
little hair of the dog.
Just take the edge off.
A little something to get back to level, and then you're good. Yeah. It's the somebody that I used to work with showed me the Monster Liquid IV thing, and I was like, "You're fucking crazy. There's no way this works." And he was like, "Dude, just try it." And it was like that. I usually like the night before an auction, we'd have a few beers together. Depending on who you were at the auction with, a few beers could turn into like a lot of beers, right? And then you got to get up at 6 a.m, be at this auction at 7:30 or whatever, and you're like, I need to be alive because I got to be in a auction house full of like 10,000 people with cars and auction, all the volume and shit. You got to get your mind right, and he did that, and I was like, oh my god, does that work? And I tried it, and I've been hooked on it ever since.
That's insane.
Not good for your heart, though. That's not a recommendation, but I think I've built up the life tolerance to be able to handle that. I'm used to the occasional and then it gets back into rhythm.
It's not supposed to do that.
Oh, it's not. Well, I thought that was normal. Nobody else's heart does it. Maybe I should go see a doctor. I don't know.
Hey, you're fine.
I made it this far.
All right. Well, I'm glad you guys had a great time. I know we did. But the game, what do we think about the game? Obviously, Mahomes getting his second ring, playing through that high ankle sprain that obviously came back, midway through the game. Shootout, absolute shootout. Abs crushed the over. If you took unders in this game, you probably didn't hit most of your bets.
I did. I hit a bunch of them, and I still had the under.
That's crazy.
I mean, statistically speaking, the under was the better bet.
Yeah, I think it definitely was. I don't think anybody expected there to be
last 10.
73 points.
Yeah, well, we were a touchdown away. Well, 4 points away from the highest Super Bowl total of all time.
Yeah,
and I only know that because my wife got really into the whole Kelsey mom thing week of the Super Bowl. She was like, I love this woman.
Sure.
And she's just like, she wanted the offenses to do so well. And like in the middle of the game, she's like looking up the highest scoring Super Bowl of all time. And she's like, I'm rooting for Mrs. Kelsey because she wanted the record to hit of most points in the NFL or in the Super Bowl history. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
We got close.
Yeah. Super close.
Yeah. Tons of action. Todd, what'd you think?
Yeah. Look, I think that, I was most impressed with Jalen Hurts. I think there's a lot of question marks to, is his artillery really full or is it kind of a facade of what he is? And I think that he had an excellent game outside of a one turnover, right? A individual made fumble. He was out open and no pressure and he caused a fumble for himself there. But I thought he played very, very well. I think Andy Reid called a kind of a simple game once he figured out what worked, right? I mean, it was kind of, I compare it a lot to like if you're playing Madden online and you're playing someone that can't pick up the RPO and you're just hitting the Y option every time for like a tight end over the center of the field. That's kind of what Andy Reid was doing when he got into the second half of the game and they started putting more points on the board, is he was kind of running the same offense and the same plays over and over again. It was just a matter of, who got the ball this time, and then it wasn't just going to be the run option, because I think it's, Isaiah Pacheco should get some credit here in this game too. I think he had a really nice game.
Of course.
And, you're talking about a guy that they stole in the 7th round, and the idea for him early in the year was, all right, well, he'll return kicks and punts. We'll figure out how to work him into the offense, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerick McKinnon kind of being the tandem in the backfield, and Helaire goes down, Pacheco steps up, and it turned into, ultimately his backfield, and, raises a lot of questions for what the Chiefs are going to do with Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the future. Right. A healthy scratch in the Super Bowl, right? A first-round pick, healthy scratch in the Super Bowl. So just something to mull over for Kansas City. But, yeah, I think Jalen Hurts and Pacheco were the two guys that I was really most impressed with in that game from individual performances. And the penalty is what it is. I don't want to get too far into it. It's a holding. It was defensive holding. It happened. You could see it. Nothing's rigged. I don't want to get super far into that.
It sucks. Even he admitted it was a penalty. He was just hoping it wasn't going to get called. I mean, to the definition of the book, it was a penalty. Have we seen that play not called? Yes. But the ref saw it. He called it. It is what it is.
Yeah. So I think another takeaway that I had is, I don't know what you guys looked at the next day, but the thing that I looked at the next day after that was who's a free agent, right? Who gets impacted the most by free agency this offseason? And if this Eagles defense was going to do it, this was the year, because they have 6 people on the defensive side of the ball that are free agents after this season.
Not only that, but you got a couple guys on both sides of the ball that, had they won this Super Bowl, I'm pretty confident would have retired. So it'll be interesting to see, obviously Kelsey and
you thinking Brandon Graham would have retired?
I think, Graham, and then what's his name on his name's just, I'll look it up when it's not my turn to talk here, but there are a couple guys on that roster a couple of the holdovers from the last Super Bowl.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
That if they were to win this, this is a pretty obvious, let's go out on top. I'm pretty sure Kelsey is 36, 37.
Yeah, he's been in the league for, this was like year 14 or 15.
And he's still at the top of his game. So it'll be interesting to see, the build up to get to this point, to the letdown of not winning the Super Bowl. I'm sure, having a guy like your brother winning it takes a little bit of the sting away, because you can tell the love that they have for each other. But still at the same time, you want that. It would have been pretty easy to walk away from the game at that point. It'll be interesting to see if they can, get themselves up to play for next year. Because I agree with you on the free agency side. I think the Eagles have a couple guys on their roster that, are at that retirement age as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Kelsey retires anyway. He's had a great career. He's got a ring. I would say he's done enough, to enter the Hall. I think he's had a great career as a center. The only thing that'll keep him around is Jalen Hurts. How much does he believe that Jalen Hurts can get them there again? And that'll be his ultimate deciding factor. But either way, he's got a bright future ahead of him with the podcast that he does with Travis, and which is super, super awesome.
Yeah, I think an outside of football thing that might impact his decision too is that his wife is about to give birth to their 3rd child. So I think that there's a certain point where maybe that starts coming into play, but you hear him. I think he's said it multiple times on their podcast. He's been mulling over, putting the cleats up for the last 3 years. But he said the reason why he keeps playing is that he loves the game still. And he loves being out there, and he's still passionate about, practice and developing not just himself, but developing others and, these relationships. He's like, I haven't lost my fire yet. He said, when I start losing the fire, that's when I know it's time to, throw the jersey in the rafters and, kind of end the legacy there. But I would hate to see him go out after. I don't know. The brother thing's cool. I think we know we talked about it, but I would hate to see him retire after listening to his brother in the Super Bowl. It feels very it still feels incomplete. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And even if he were to retire, and if, maybe the first year, but he doesn't strike me as a guy that is going to be away from the game, whether that be in the booth or the sidelines as a coach. I actually think he would be an amazing coach. Maybe obviously not a head coach to start, but, Kelsey as an offensive line coach or, something in that realm. Would make a ton of sense. Now there are a lot of people that you could, make that case for as they retire. And, it's, you're still giving that level of life commitment without the satisfaction of actually playing the game you love. So maybe he's got enough in the bank that I don't think he needs to coach, and that's why a lot of those guys gravitate towards the booth, because there is a little bit better of a work-life balance while being close to the game.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see. But my takeaways from the game were, I'm kind of like, there's a lot of things that went to plan, but at the same time, I think it was completely inversed. And I'll start with just the total itself. Kansas City winning by 3. It got to, I believe, 2.5 plus for the Chiefs, minus for the Eagles. So it's interesting that it was the inverse of that line. Basically, you had one quarterback throwing for 304 yards, one for 182. Yeah. Before the game, I would have told you it would have been the inverse.
Right.
You had the Eagles rushing yards in the game outside of Jalen Hurts. It was 115. They had 45 total rushing yards. Miles Sanders completely taken out of that game. We talked about the Eagles rushing offense coming into this, and how important that would be to this game. Jalen Hurts wasn't really running the ball very well from a total yard standpoint. Obviously, he still had the carries, but he didn't really have the yards. Obviously, coming out of that injury is a big factor, but they certainly let him loose in the Super Bowl. Why wouldn't you? Kelsey obviously does his thing, Smith, Brown doing their thing. But the biggest thing, too, from the inverse was, how much did we think both of these defensive lines were going to be an impact in this game? And, of course, the one thing we haven't mentioned yet, 20 minutes into this podcast, was the unfortunate situation of the field conditions in this game. And
I wanted to say, can we pause that and go back to that? Because I think that's kind of the centerpiece of the Super Bowl to me.
Yeah, more so than the official. Like, I'm sorry, in my opinion, and we can talk about it later too, but like, that was a hold. And I'm really upset that over the replays that they show, it's always the front view of like the camera of the game. The flag came from the backside. And if you watch the inverse of that camera angle, it's very obvious. He tugs his jersey and then restricts him upfield. It was a bad throw, and you can argue uncatchable, even if it wasn't. But at that point, you've thrown him so much off of the route that, listen, I don't want, as a fan, I don't want the game to end that way either. But literally right before that play happened, I was talking to a buddy about, hot take, I thought that was a well officiated game, especially for what we've seen all year. They made a lot of right calls. The Miles Sanders fumble, reversed to an incomplete pass, letting the Goddard throw on the sideline. Anyways, I just in general thought that was actually a pretty well officiated game for how much we've complained about it. My problem is I think as NFL fans, we're just waiting for that one moment to just be upset about. And I am not going to let that ruin the fact that I watched one of the greatest Super Bowls of my lifetime. It's not even going to be a blip on my radar. But with that being said, let's talk about the field conditions.
Yeah, so I think that the Cardinals organization as a whole should be embarrassed. Watching that game, watching it back a second time, just to kind of pick and pull what I wanted to take away from the game, it was horrendous. I mean, you could see immediately into the game, within the first 5 minutes of the game, people sliding all over the field. Obviously a natural grass field, right? I think it's pretty clear there, but people sliding on the field, losing footing with next to no contact. I think that's a sign of poor field conditions. The quantity of grass that was upended from the root of the field, as you watch people just make general cuts, it looked like that they were digging into a batter's box at times. And I think there's two people responsible for this. It's shame on the Cardinals for not checking field conditions prior to the game, but I think it's also a little bit of shame on the NFL for not doubling down. And you double down and check the field conditions here and see if it's fit or not. And you do that early in the week, right? Because you're rolling this grass out, right? Because they're taking the sod and rolling it out 3 or 4 days prior to the game to get it right for the game itself, so you can do all the preparation. Why is nobody checking this for quality control?
Right. You can blame the Cardinals, but that's solely on the NFL. Once the Super Bowl rolls into town, the NFL takes over operations. Okay.
That's fair.
And it's not like the Cardinals were in the playoffs. So trust me, the NFL got in there early. I'm not trying to defend them. I'm 100% sure that there are people involved in field operations that are, guys that work for the Cardinals, but that's the NFL's guys. It's like the sod father or whatever. He's like done the field for all of the NFL Super Bowl games. It's about time for that guy to retire, I would say.
It was horrible, man.
Well, it was this whole thing where it was a dual investment between the NFL and the PGA over this grass. And this was like them unveiling it. They've been growing it for the past 2 years at a sod farm in Arizona. And listen, I don't think we've seen these type of issues like you have. I know like Soldier Field, for instance, is notorious for terrible field conditions, or the Meadowlands in New York, right? But I've never really heard that coming out of Arizona. This was an entirely new field that was installed 2 weeks before the game, and I place the blame solely on the NFL. And I've heard some conspiracy theorists come out and say, for all the people saying there should be, this is the NFL's pushback of saying this is what natural grass gets you as opposed to synthetic turf, which is bullshit. And again, that's just conspiracy theorists. But, for the Cardinals, that is a great facility when it comes to, they have their entire field on fucking locomotive tracks to get actual natural sunlight to come back into the stadium. They just did a terrible job of executing it and installing a new field 2 weeks before. It's kind of like, when I got married, I got new shoes for it. I sure as shit broke them in before, I didn't show up the day of my wedding and say, let's try these puppies out. I wore them around for a little bit just to avoid that embarrassment.
Sure.
You got to wear that shit in.
Yep. Yeah. You don't walk around your wedding limping around because you got sore feet.
Well, I was, but that was just because I was busting moves.
Yeah.
Dude.
You're just right.
But here's the thing. Why did they wait until 2 weeks prior? Like, they had plenty of time. The Cardinals weren't in the playoffs. They had over a month to get it right.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I agree.
That's bullshit.
And I'm sure the NFL took over that stadium right after the regular season. I'm sure of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would think so, right? And I guess maybe, I don't know. I guess you're right. It's probably nothing on the Cardinals. It's all pretty much on the NFL. I was trying to maybe alleviate some of that pressure from them, but you're right.
Why?
I mean, if you're, I don't know. It's just where my head goes, but I think it's if you are, if you're putting your roots down in this new dynamic thing that's going to, revolutionize the way you could play on grass, blah, blah, blah. Cause I heard that too about this. And then that's your introduction. You've lost everything because what was this? This was the third largest viewed show ever in the history of television. Third largest viewed event ever, I believe.
I don't know. I didn't
largest Super Bowl viewing ever. And so you're putting eyes on people who don't, because you're getting the people who don't normally watch football, the people who casually watch football, and then the people like us who watch every single part of football. And if all three of those parties are saying like, man, the grass looks bad, or hey, that looks like shit, then that's too many eyes to see a bad thing.
Yeah, I think at the last minute, Rihanna was like, just put me in the air. I'm not touching that thing.
Bold move by her for being pregnant and just air gliding.
Actually, while we're on it, what did you guys think of that? We should talk about it. What did you guys think of the halftime show?
I think she's a great performer.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought it was above par. It was certainly better than average, but it wasn't the best I've ever seen.
We got spoiled last year, though. You got to remember that. For our generation, we got spoiled.
Yeah,
she didn't need the entire ensemble to come out. She was able to carry that show basically by herself with a bunch of dancers and pregnant. Obviously, people were giving her shit for lip syncing and things like that, but it's like it's the Super Bowl and she's running around and she's pregnant.
Syncing. Like she is like
there was part of it. There was like it was like half vocals, half
every single Super Bowl performance is done by a backing track that you sing over.
Absolutely. No, I'm not knocking that at all because
I don't either.
She's great. She sounded great. And I know a lot of people that wouldn't do what she did and get on that platform and go, 100 feet up in the air.
I wouldn't do it, and I can't get pregnant.
That's a fact.
Last year's was great. My all-timer still though is Prince for the Bears Colts Super Bowl.
Yeah,
you'll never beat that to me.
Well, I think that's one of those things too. Like you're seeing a musician, and obviously I don't want to take anything away from Rihanna, right? But
that was great. I actually genuinely enjoyed it and forgot how many bangers she has.
Yeah, but
I knew a lot more Rihanna songs than I thought I did.
Yeah, But I think the thing about when you see a performer like Prince perform at the halftime show, and when he had done that performance, he had already created this international legacy, and he wasn't really doing that much anymore by the time he had done that Super Bowl performance. That was like a reintroduction in the world, right? It was kind of like, Elton John's goodbye tour when he played at Dodger Stadium this past year. Like, that was an incredible thing because you're watching someone who is, firmly planted their feet into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, into the legacy of music, and you're getting to see them on the biggest platform again, and they just fucking crush it. You're like, yeah, this is why I've listened to them, or it reinvigorates you wanting to listen to them. I think the thing I always get weird about with the Super Bowl, depending on who performs, is there's only so much you could do with someone who's a recently relevant artist. Like when you get somebody like a Rihanna, or like Eminem was last year, where you have a decade plus of music that you can play through, you're hitting all your target audience through the Super Bowl for that, right?
Right.
You're getting really 3 generations of people who are listening to different genres of music.
Well,
by doing that.
Well, the cool thing about last year was it wasn't, I mean, obviously Eminem, and that's as east as it gets, but it was all the West Coast. You had Snoop, Dre, Kendrick,
Right.
like that was pretty sweet. But it was the fact that it was the NFL finally back in Los Angeles.
Right.
So to have those acts, 50 Cent being in there, like that was him just upside down. Like
Straight out of music video.
It's my first memory of 50 Cent is the beginning of that music video and him just coming out of the top of the
and then he
did
it
your
live.
TV. Yeah,
like that was just incredible. That was really good. And again, I'm not taking anything. I think there were, I can speak from personal experience. There were some people that were over at our Super Bowl party that were certainly more interested in the Rihanna performance than the game itself. And that's something else that we, when we're talking about the highest rated event of the year, there's obviously the game. We're going to watch the game regardless. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. This could be on at whatever time, and I'm going to make it work. But there's a reason it's on at Sunday at 6:30. You're going to get there's something about the halftime performance just kind of being a snapshot of where we are as like pop culture. That you can kind of go back and look at different halftimes and say this is, a reflection of where we are in the time, as well as, let's face it, everyone loves watching the commercials, and there are people that are, whether it be wives or even, there are, guys that don't necessarily care about football. There's a reason that so many people watch the Super Bowl that aren't necessarily football fans, because there's the camaraderie, there's the drinks, there's the food, but of course there's the halftime performance, there's the commercials, and of course the football as well. And that's why the Super Bowl is one of the greatest events that there is to watch.
It's fair.
Yeah,
it's very
absolutely. Fair. Well, I mean, do we have anything else we want to touch on?
Were there any commercials you guys?
No, I don't. There wasn't any that I really remember that I even laughed at.
What's so funny? I feel like the commercials are like Saturday Night Live, where you're like, it's an institution, but I like for the last whatever years I've been like, they're just not as good as they used to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's something about being like young or like younger where you're like, this is funny. Like I'm into these commercials. Like that's fun and stuff like that. There were a couple that like made me laugh and stuff like that. But it's like one of the things I hate too now is I don't need to see that shit 4 days before the Super Bowl. They like put it on social media. And I'm like, the whole point is to watch it.
I want to be surprised.
Exactly. And I'm like, I've already seen
lost it. Yeah. Yeah. I think that, and this is just my take on Super Bowl commercials as a whole over the last 5 years. When we were younger, the Super Bowl commercials were based on products that were already readily available, and they were just putting a fun spin on it, right? You always had like your Clydesdale commercials. There was always some sort of, whatever the most popular website was, like, GoDaddy, whatever. Those were always really good because those were already submitted. And now it feels like, it feels like all the commercials are just invitations to new products, right? Obviously coming from the automotive industry, that was kind of the Super Bowl Sunday was a lot of introduction to new cars, a lot, or to new generations. Yeah. So I use that as a tool to figure out what was coming in the future. But now they've already kind of rolled out everything you can in the automotive industry too, that's current with what you could do technologically with a car. So nothing's exciting. We've already seen a Hummer crab walk. right? So it's too late. There's nothing out there that's better than that right now. So unless there's a electronic car that goes like 0 to 120 in 3 seconds, then I'm not interested in any car commercials anymore. And then everything else is just product plugs. So it just doesn't feel as exciting as it used to. And maybe we're just getting old and grumpy. And now we are in the same shoes our parents used to be when we would laugh endlessly at Super Bowl commercials. Now we're our dad or mom sitting in the corner watching and going, I don't get it. I felt that way a few times. I don't get it. What's the point of that?
I don't know. I don't think we're that old yet. I think they were just not good. I think it's gone.
We were all just talking about 2-day hangovers, so
yeah. That's true. That's true.
A good point. That is a good point. But no, I mean,
I think we're still
really
young at heart.
out. Yeah, nothing that really stuck out to me that I really care. I mean, granted, I was pretty drunk, so I might have to go back through and put the Super Bowl commercials on replay and check them out.
Nah, you don't have to, because you'll keep seeing it. Like, it's just the introduction of that. Like, I've already started to see a bunch of them, a ton.
Yeah. Any social media feed you scroll through, you're going to see half of them within your first 10 scrolls.
Like the Breaking Bad one was funny, but I had seen if I had only seen that on Sunday, I would have thought it was really good. But it's like it takes it all away.
It's fair.
No, absolutely fair. All right, you guys want to talk baseball or All-Star break?
Well, I think before we get into that, let's talk about all the head coaching vacancies are gone. Every head coaching position is filled. With the wrap up of the NFL season, the final 2 slots were covered by Philadelphia Eagles head coaches or coordinators of their respective positions. So that's another part of Philadelphia, I think, that raises a question mark.
Should have mentioned that as well.
And I didn't think about it because we were just kind of player focused, but that's a new OC and a DC, and there's going to be player changes, or personnel changes on top of that. It's going to be different, right? And I think Sirianni probably has some people that he's trying to pluck and play there to fill those 2 spots, but Steichen is one of those guys that's kind of just had success everywhere. He was Justin Herbert's offensive coordinator in his rookie year, and we saw what Justin Herbert did in his rookie year. And then obviously, the success he's had with Jalen Hurts, and now he's going to Indianapolis, and he's going to get what Jim Irsay says is the quarterback of the future for the Colts, right? So you're seeing a young coach get into a new environment where he's already kind of laid the groundwork that he's going to be the guy calling the plays too. So that's going to be interesting because I think he's going to have a large say in what they do with that elusive trade up to number 1 or, number 2, wherever they kind of land. And then you have Gannon going to Arizona, which there's a large sigh of relief for me. Obviously, the other candidate in that being Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator for the Bengals, for that top spot. But, he's inheriting kind of a questionable contract in Kyler Murray and a bruised up team, right? I mean, the Cardinals were bad last year. There wasn't really a lot of spotlight. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think about kind of like what the expectations are for Gannon and who you think who the best hire was so far, or who the best head coaching hire was for this upcoming season.
Well, I mean, I think Indianapolis did a great job, because their biggest struggle this season was offense and a scheme or a lack thereof. When Jonathan Taylor went down, they really didn't have anything else. There was a lot of games where they even got shut out, and it was just a nightmare. And obviously he had success with Herbert and success with Hurts, and a young quarterback that he's going to get to pick. I think that's just a win-win for Indianapolis. They've got some good young weapons there on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is going to come back. So I expect Indianapolis to be what we thought they were going to be this year, but maybe a little bit below that. Obviously, with a rookie quarterback coming in, he's going to be making some mistakes, but should be an exciting team to watch next year.
Aaron, what do you think?
I mean, there weren't really a ton that did much for me. Like, obviously, the big name is Sean Payton going to Denver, and Don't care. Like that does nothing for me. He's had his moments in the NFL for sure, but obviously what we saw out of Denver last year, I'm more worried about Russell Wilson than I am whatever a head coach can do. Not to mention, I feel like Peyton's kind of past his prime at this point. Like he's kind of a guy who's, he was taken out of New Orleans. He spent his time on TV. Like I've seen this before, whether it be Gruden and there's different levels to it. I know, but like that does nothing for me. And yet everybody's like A plus. I'm not giving up picks for a coach. Like,
yeah, I feel the
so
same way.
that's not the question you asked, but like, that's the one I'm least impressed, like honestly, least impressed by. And then, when you talk about Gannon, who's your defensive coordinator for the Bengals?
Anarumo.
I think there's a reason, everyone was up in arms that he wasn't getting interviews, and he started to get them as well. The league's just such an offensive league now that, it was, Gannon being the defensive coordinator, it doesn't happen that much anymore. People are going to skew more towards the offensive coordinators. And I think that's why, Anarumo wasn't getting those looks. And the one that, is going to come to mind is, again, a non-hire. It's going to be Bieniemy. Right. And one everyone's talking about now is he going to have to take an offensive coordinator job where he gets the play calling so he can even get a look at head coaching.
Sure.
So I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think about that, because, if you go to 5 straight, conference championships, 2 Super Bowls, and 3 Super Bowls total, you think you can get a head coaching gig out of it.
Right. So I think that, I talk about this pretty extensively with a coworker of mine, because he's very like-minded to us. And Eric Bieniemy is under Andy Reid's playbook, the thumb of Andy Reid's playbook, right? And there's always going to be that asterisk next to him and what he is as a potential head coach, because he's an offensive coordinator for a head coach that calls all the plays. And Bieniemy got some credit in that Super Bowl for kind of making some of the halftime adjustments. He was the one that kind of took the decision of kind of changing the RPO approach and going a lot more up tempo and then slow down and kind of like trying to repace the game. They did that a lot in the second half. But he's been with an offensive minded coach for the last 5 years. Have you given all these accolades to the Chiefs, but he's not the one that's getting the credit there. Andy Reid's the one getting the credit there. Right. And right now, I mean, he interviewed for the Commander's job today. I believe that other than Philadelphia, that's the only OC position open. Right. Because the Ravens filled their spot with the offensive coordinator from the University of Georgia. The Texans filled it with the quarterback's coach from the 49ers. So it's if he doesn't get the job at the Commanders, he stays in Kansas City, and I think the same stigma exists.
No, the one in Washington got filled today. It went to the former OC from Baltimore.
Greg Roman did get that. I thought he just interviewed.
That's what I thought. I read that he got that.
Oh, maybe let me double check that. I know that he interviewed for the position or like maybe day after.
Greg Roman.
If he did, that's not good.
Oh no, it's just the interview. You're right.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd be shocked by that. I think obviously he's had some success in his time as an.
It was a busy day at work. I saw Greg Roman in Commanders, and I was like, holy shit, how would you do that?
Yeah, so obviously he's a guy that had success, or kind of he got Colin Kaepernick his start in the NFL with the 49ers. He was the OC at that time there, and that led to him getting hired with the Ravens, and then them drafting Lamar Jackson, and obviously Lamar Jackson had his MVP season, but then we saw how stale he was as an offensive coordinator and how stale that offense was.
Just not able to evolve.
Yeah. So I think it would be a great opportunity I think it's a double-edged sword for Bieniemy if he does get the job in Washington, because you're about to be a coach or a coordinator in a franchise that's about to be sold, right? Which likely means a lot of changes in terms of front office, which probably means Ron Rivera gets fired too, which if you're an OC or a DC or a coach at all on that team, then you're thinking probably maybe you have a year to prove yourself. And if it doesn't go great, then you're on the chopping block again. So, it's got to be a concern for Bieniemy as he interviews for that job is I have to go into Washington which they've already said Sam Howell will be their starting quarterback next year. Fifth or sixth round pick Sam Howell will be their starting quarterback next year. So you have a rookie quarterback, good offensive weapons, and a franchise that's kind of in complete shambles. So it would be a real project for him to go in there, but it could be an opportunity for him to shine or an opportunity to kind of fall flat. And it could go either way at that point.
Yeah, I've seen a ton of people on social media basically, cowering at the NFL, or not cowering, but like giving crap to the NFL for the fact that Bieniemy still hasn't been hired as a head coach. And I almost want to zag on that just because I see it so much. And this guy has been interviewed the last 3 years in rounds, and maybe he just doesn't interview well.
He could.
Like, none of us are in that room.
Yep.
And trust me, the NFL will hire who they think is the best person available. You can talk to me about race stuff, and certainly I'm not trying to discredit it because there is absolutely documented cases of this happening. So I'm not trying to discredit that at all. But for the amount of interviews that this guy has had, obviously him not having offensive control over the Chiefs is certainly part of it, I'm sure. But as nobody has been in these rooms for like 8 different teams that he's interviewed for, maybe he's just not the right guy for I don't know how he responds to these questions.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people are just afraid to say that. And I don't know. Yeah, let's see what he does with his own offense, because trust me, if he has his own offense and it looks like this, he'll get a head coaching job yesterday.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, some people just don't interview well. I mean, that's real life NFL. I mean, it's like any other job. Some people just get the what do you call that? The jitters, the anxiety,
right.
And
you do well on the test, but you don't do well in the field.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. He's the opposite, though.
Yeah. I saw something interesting that Rex Ryan is likely to become the next defensive coordinator for the Broncos. Which,
oh my God,
what?
Are they just trying to put a dream team of coaches together? Like, what the hell?
That's what I'm talking about. That crap. Like, you're bringing in someone way past his prime, and he's going to start bringing in a bunch of people who are way past theirs as well.
He is 7 years removed from being a coach. I think because he got fired from the Bills, right? And that was like mid 2010s, like 2015, 2016. Yeah. So, yikes! What? Like, Aaron, you're right. It's all gimmicky. It's you have a robot at quarterback. You bring in a legacy head coach, and now he's just going to be the Grim Reapers in Denver, and he's just bringing everybody back from the dead.
Hammering the under next year for the Broncos.
Oh, shit. That's insane. I mean, I don't know. Maybe his teeth will, get the lights reflected off of him, and then he'll blind the offense. Maybe that's going to be his strategy next year.
The set of stunts, it's like that feels like a villain that could have been in Austin Powers.
Before we totally move off football and the Super Bowl, did any of you guys, obviously, me and Corey jumped on Saturday, and we had a pretty nice affair of some of the picks we had. Did you guys have any fun things that hit, or any fun bets that hit? And I have a couple examples I just want to throw out because it was a pretty fun day.
I will go back through what I did.
So this isn't one I did, but while you're looking, I had a buddy who, and the implied odds on this are terrible, which is why I don't bet on it. But the Butker not first kick, but just in general, just a kick to hit off the uprights. Like right before the kick, he's like, "Yeah, I got a bet where if it hits off the uprights or the crossbar, it wins," which is a great bet. And I had seen it, but it was like plus 450, and I saw a stat where it's like it basically happens across the NFL 1 out of every 10 weeks or something like that. So again, implied odds is just terrible. But of course, the first one, just the loudest doink you've ever heard, and the entire basement just erupts and just let's go. Like, that's just a fun Super Bowl bet to root for because sure. Whether it's a field goal or an extra point, it's in play. And then I had a pretty pedestrian day, actually. If it wasn't for this, I still would have been plus, but not a lot. My biggest hit was I took Goddard at exact receiving yards between 60 and 69. and he hit 60 on the nose for a
Wow.
big plus 1,400. Yeah, it's just a nice little. But
That's an
those were
interesting
my. Yeah, I was happy to see it.
Yeah, so I had that flash boost. Kelsey and AJ Brown each have 50+ receiving yards for at plus 100.
We had the 25 each half, Bobby. Like that seemed like a lock in the first
and that
quarter.
and that didn't hit.
It didn't hit.
And that's crazy. Like I looked the next day because I was for sure that one hit.
Well, part of it was, Kadarius Toney with that punt return. There just weren't yards to be had.
Yeah.
Isaiah Pacheco was running the ball for 5 yards a carry, so that was the way the second half was going. Honestly, it was that Kadarius Toney punt return that really killed it.
Yeah. I had a 4-leg anytime touchdown scorer. I got Kelsey, AJ Brown, and Pacheco. The only one that didn't hit was Miles Sanders. I should have taken Jalen Hurts because he stole all the rushing touchdowns.
He had the octopus, which I didn't even realize was a bet.
He actually hit that?
Yeah. Do you know what are you guys familiar with the octopus?
No.
Again, I just learned about it.
It's a rushing touchdown and then the 2-point conversion.
Just scoring a touchdown and then being the person to convert the 2-point conversion. So octopus 8 points.
Yeah.
He did that. And he had some wild ones too. Even his 3 touchdowns.
They were talking about that before the game too. I should have fucking.
His 3 touchdowns was plus 2,500. His first touchdown, Gainwell got called back. His third touchdown, Devontae Smith somehow tiptoed out at the 2-yard line. Like he had some crazy ones that probably shouldn't even have happened.
Yeah. And then I missed another parlay because Mahomes didn't throw over 225 yards.
Yeah,
Which seems like a lot.
I hit all of my other 4 legs of that parlay.
I know Vegas did well because
that was your parlay, Todd.
Yeah, that was mine. So I'll give you my parlay that I did. I took a couple alternate routes in mind. So it was Travis Kelce anytime touchdown scorer, Hurts anytime touchdown scorer, alternate receiving yards for Kelce 40+, Jalen Hurts alternate passing yards 200+, and this is the leg I didn't hit on. Patrick Mahomes alternate passing yards at 225+.
That's
so
the one you just throw in, like just pad it because that's a lock, and that's
why that was it. That was my 5th one. I was like, oh, I want to make this. I want to have a part of this, and I feel like I'm at least going to hit 3 of the 5. They hit 4 of the 5, and the 1 was fucking Pat Mahomes.
How many did he end up with? Was like
187.
God,
but 3 touchdowns.
My other wild ones, and one that I called off on our pod on Saturday was I had the over of James Harden made 3-pointers the next day over MVS. Valdez-Scantling, who did not have a reception.
Yeah.
And Harden didn't hit a 3 to like the 3rd quarter. So I was just like, dude, don't you fucking dare. Don't you fucking dare.
You were sweating it. I actually just while we were.
And then I had the AJ Brown longest reception over 26.5. That touchdown sealed it.
Well, we were just sitting here. I actually just put together a parlay for the Lakers-Pelicans game. So it's
let's go.
Anthony Davis, 10+ rebounds. Anthony Davis, 25+ points. Brandon Ingram, 25+ points. And then Trey Murphy with 2+ made 3s.
Okay.
The Ingram 25 scares me.
There's no Zion. Who else is going to score?
No, Ingram's been crushing overs.
I put him in some parlays, and I did one the other day. It was one of those boosts. It was like Paul George, Gilgeous-Alexander, and
I'm out of the boosts.
And
they know too much.
Yeah, like both of them hit except for Paul George. Paul George had 19.
Doesn't hit.
It was they all just needed to get 20 points. The other 2 cleared it by a ton, and he had 19.
They're like, oh, we'll give it to you at plus 150.
Like,
you're welcome.
I'm gonna throw $15 on that, and then no, like,
whoops. See, I listen to you guys. I'm learning as I'm putting these parlays together.
Don't do the boost, man.
With some free money that I have left from FanDuel.
Oh, is that popular bet that I see on here?
Yeah. So
plus 483. That's good odds.
I'm hearing you guys, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, all right, well, that sounds like it checks all the boxes of what I've heard these guys discuss. So I do actively listen to you because I still learn.
The problem is the single game parlays or the 1 game parlays. You have to bet something over.
Yep.
And you can go low, and you can say like 15+ for somebody who averages 25 points a game. But the key to good parlays is taking a couple unders, because the game script, like as I was telling Corey on Saturday for Generous Degenerates, was at a certain point, the math just doesn't check out. Like I can't, and even in a game like this, which is one of the highest scoring games in Super Bowl history, Pat Mahomes under everyone had the plus 225 in their single game. I'm telling you, Vegas made out, man.
Travis Kelce under on the receptions. That would have hit.
Oh, he hit his over receptions. I don't know. I had him on the receiving yard.
It was 7.5.
Receiving yards is over, but he actually missed the over on.
I had him on the yards. I didn't have his receptions, but my point is the Eagles had most of the money on the spread and the money line, and anybody that was throwing things in single game parlays or anything like that had low amounts on Patrick Mahomes, and he didn't even hit 200. There's a lot of lost bets just because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was listening to you guys when you guys were talking about it on Saturday, and like I got to get comfortable taking some unders. Everybody wants to play the over.
You want because you want to root for it.
Yeah, you don't want to root against somebody like not hitting, like not having a good game, but like you got to hit the under sometimes. And now I understand it. I've lost enough bets to know.
Let's see if we learn anything from it, though.
You got to hit the unders.
But will he learn?
I'm gonna put together.
It's still a great,
parlays with.
Even if you lose, as long as you don't lose, as long as you're not completely out of it, it's not a bad day. Because at the very least, how much more fun did that make watching the game?
That was a ton of fun. I had before the playoffs started, I picked 4 teams to win the Super Bowl, when it was the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Bengals, and the Niners.
For this year. Oh, for this year. Nice.
So I put $10 on each team, and I made out. So.
Speaking of which, I do have to give myself a little pat on the back. When we were doing our over-unders pod, I picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl this year.
You did.
No big deal, but
you did.
I think I was the only one.
You did. You're right.
So when Travis Kelce says no one picked us, just fuck off, Trav. I had you guys way early.
Yeah, I didn't. I hate the underdog approach when you've made it to the AFC Championship game 5 years in a row.
Everyone does it. Like it's a little cringe. I'll give Trav the benefit of the doubt that we're crushing Coors Lights all day, and you're also amongst the only people that will accept that comment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's just your fan base.
It's just
right?
you and your boys.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting to see Pat Mahomes in that light, because I've always heard that man can drink a few Coors Lights, and
he's a big Coors Light guy.
He is, yeah. And supposedly, I don't know, the parade started at like what, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, something like that. He had like polished off almost a whole case of Coors Light before they even started the damn parade.
Well, when they had the
it's Tom Brady drinking 2 Bud Lights and tossing the Lombardi Trophy around all over.
Yeah, right. Well, when they had was it Rodgers, Allen, Mahomes, and was it Brady, or who was it? The golf thing?
Oh yeah,
like one of the last ones. It's like Pat Mahomes was just crushing Coors Lights out of the course, and I'm like, that's how I play golf. That's relatable.
Yeah. I like that guy. He knows something that I know. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just sad, guy. I'm sad football's ending. But
yeah,
the NFL does a really good job of always being in the news. So, of course, there's going to be stuff coming up. Free agency starts in a month.
Yeah. I think it's a month from
today.
Today, yeah, that it starts. And then obviously McShay released his next mock draft, which
coming.
We'll start digging into those. This is probably a good night to get into the mock draft stuff. So yeah, if football does a good job, and if you're really desperate, you're not getting your fix. The XFL starts in what?
Not doing it.
3 weeks.
Not doing it.
2 weeks.
Not
the uniforms are great. The USFL starts around the same time.
It'll be interesting to see the highlights. I don't think I'm going to take any time out of my day to.
I'm going to watch. I'm at least going to watch the XFL. I need to see what the environment of the game itself is to determine if I'm going to see it, if I'm going to try to even invest any time in it.
Sad part, better field conditions.
That's right.
Nap.
That's right. That's right.
That would, I mean, I will. That's a good point though, Bobby. I mean, an XFL game at 3:30 on a Sunday, like I'll fall asleep to that.
Yeah, you had a rough Saturday night. You're watching a little football. You don't care if you fall asleep to the XFL. If you're watching your team at 1 o'clock on Sunday, no matter how hungover you are, you're not missing a second of it. But you're watching the Seattle fire-breathing Dragons against the San Antonio
Sea Dragons.
Yeah, whatever. Same difference. We said the same thing a different way, but you don't care if you miss, a half hour, if you miss the first half of that, or like you wake up and you're like, oh, it's the fourth quarter. That's crazy. What happened?
Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, I just don't know. We'll see. I'm gonna see some Sports Center highlights and see if it's if it's something worth watching. I'll obviously ask you, and you'll point me in the right direction.
I got you guys' back.
No, we appreciate our
I'll follow that sword for
XFL expert Todd Gottschall.
Yeah, I'll follow that sword for Rally
all
the
details.
Maybe that'll be our niche, guys. Maybe I can throw together an XFL podcast, and I'll find our niche crowd, and I'll get into my groove there.
There you go.
Get it on the ground of something there.
Absolutely.
I'm out.
All right. Well, where do we want to move next? We want to shift to basketball. Do we want to talk baseball? We're an hour deep. I know we weren't planning on going super late tonight. We can always just wrap and game plan for next week. It's up to you guys.
So maybe let's just touch on, obviously we're getting close to the All-Star break here. You posed the question earlier. I want to hear what everybody's thoughts are. Who's your biggest surprise team, and who's your biggest disappointment team of the NBA season thus far?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I really like what Dallas did towards the All-Star break with the acquisition of Kyrie. I think that's going to really help Luka and that whole dynamic there in Dallas. There was a stat that I saw today where prior to Kyrie Irving showing up, they were like 0-11 without Luka, and they've had the last 3 games without Luka, and they're 3-0. So
they just dropped 2 in a row. So they were, now they're 3.
They were okay. So it was a semi-dated stat, but at the end of the day, that man has some help now, and I mean Luka, and in my opinion, he's the most exciting player to watch in the NBA right now. I just think that man is incredibly talented. He's so young, so we'll see what he's able to do.
I love Luka, but that's your opinion. That's fair. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that.
No, I mean I think there's a ton. I mean, the great thing about today's NBA is there's a lot of young talent, and it's kind of like that, like the NFL shift that we saw, from the old guard to kind of the new guard. You're seeing a lot of young talent come through, and it's promising for the NBA. That's just my thoughts. Aaron, what do you think?
I just want to touch on your Luka comment real quick, because I hear a lot of people say that, and I don't disagree. Like, Luka is easily, probably a top 3 player in the NBA. Yeah, there's just a real lot of Houston James Harden in that game, and I gave James Harden so much shit for that style of basketball that it would be unfair to not give it to Luka.
I never really thought about it.
It's a little bit boring to watch at times. Like, don't get me wrong, it's outstanding, it's phenomenal. But like, the guy holds onto the ball 40% of the time, and it's like, that's just not basketball to me. And I've always really, really liked Luka. It's for whatever reason this year it's starting to become like a little bit draining, in the same way where after you see Harden do that year after year, or even like Westbrook with the Thunder after Durant left, where you're like,
yeah, that's a good point.
All right, this is just not my style. Not to take anything away from his game, but just to point that out. My biggest surprise, without a doubt, is the Sacramento Kings.
Damn it.
They are in a division.
In there.
I'm sorry. They're in a division with the Suns, the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Warriors, and they're sitting on top. There's no way that anyone would have expected that at the beginning of the season. That is without a doubt my biggest surprise. Biggest disappointment. I mean, there's not a lot that's really out there that's insanely disappointing, at least for how I thought the league was going to go. I didn't think the Lakers were going to be that great. I guess, gun to my head, I would just say the Nets, just because of what has transpired over the last couple of weeks. But also, I would have never trusted that situation to be tenable at all anyway. So it's kind of tough for me to call that a disappointment when I didn't really think you're going to be able to trust Kyrie Irving for that long, and of course Durant at the beginning of the year asking out anyway. So, but my biggest shot for sure is the Kings.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Kings I think they're taking advantage of a Western Conference that's in the middle of a transition too.
It's in flux. Yeah, absolutely.
Who's kind of gaining their way towards the top, and they have some young talent there. I guess you can't really. I don't know if you can call De'Aaron Fox young anymore. He's been in the NBA for 5 years now.
He's a vet,
but yeah, he's a vet now. But you go and trade for Sabonis, and then you go and get Kevin Huerter from the Hawks. And you draft Keegan Murray, and a lot of the pieces that fell into Sacramento just worked, and it's an example of a team taking advantage of just kind of plugging and playing and using some draft capital to make some moves, right? They get Sabonis, and in return they get rid of Buddy Hield and Halliburton. It's kind of worked out both ways. Obviously, the Pacers' record doesn't necessarily reflect that. But for Sabonis, it gives him the opportunity to be on a playoff team. He was never going to get a shot in OKC, so he goes to Indiana, shows that he could be a double-double guy. Now he gets to go to Sacramento and be an all-star. So I think that's a great thing. I'm excited to watch. I'm excited to watch the Western Conference change. We've lived in the Lakers Warriors era for a while. I'm ready to not watch a team that has gold in their uniform be in the NBA Finals. That's kind of where I'm at right now. But honestly, fellas, I think my biggest disappointment, or a team that I really thought was going to come in and make a splash in the Eastern Conference, is the Atlanta Hawks. They're sitting at 500. I thought that they would kind of be closer to the top 5 mark in the Eastern Conference. I was a doubter of Trae Young. He's not having a bad year by any means. He's averaging like 27 and 7. But I thought when they went out and got DeJounte Murray from the Spurs that was going to make a real impact to them being able to have a tandem scoring combo there. And then you have Bogdanovich, and I thought John Collins would be healthy, and then obviously he got hurt again. So I look at them every year and I see a roster that fits, that could make a splash in the playoffs if the circumstances were right. And I feel like I'm looking at the same thing again, and I'm just going to be disappointed.
Well, they had that Eastern Conference Finals run, right?
Yeah.
And we haven't really heard from them since.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's it. Again, there's always one or two teams in the NBA that I feel like are just a guy or two short. And I feel like it's the Hawks almost every year, but I think that they have kind of the foundation of the roster. It's just not, it hasn't been healthy together. We haven't seen it. We haven't seen somebody kind of relieve Trae Young from all the scoring duties. And I thought DeJounte Murray, after the year he had with San Antonio, thought this is a perfect fit for him. You have two guys that are above average ball handlers, that are above average shooters. They complement each other well. DeJounte Murray is a good defender. So I thought it would give the opportunity for Trae Young to become even more of a scorer. And he's really stayed the same and even lost a little bit in scoring. And last year, going to the All-Star break, he was averaging over 30 points a game. But I'm sick of putting my time and effort into trying to make the Hawks a better team, and it doesn't return for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of my surprises, I think, is the Cavs. They're sitting 4th in the East right now. I mean, obviously they're getting their shit kicked in right now by Philly. Sorry, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean they're down 12. We got some time going on over here. It's all right.
Oh, it was like 16.
It was bad early. Yeah, we had a live bet on 12.5 in this game too.
What's been? I mean, obviously Donovan Mitchell's been a great piece for them this year. I mean, what else can you attribute to their success?
I think in the last month you've really seen Evan Mobley take that leap for sure.
Yeah.
We're seeing him put up real productive games. The defense has always been there. It'd be nice to see him be a little bit more consistent at the free throw line and behind the arc. But outside of that, he has been just so consistent. And there was like Kendrick Perkins it was like probably like a month and a half or two ago, basically saying, I haven't seen Mobley take that leap this year. And it's just not capturing what's actually going on. Evan Mobley is the 4th option on a team. He's the only, of that core of Allen, Garland, Mitchell, and he's the only one who's not an all-star yet so far. Evan Mobley has a rightful place to be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. And those aren't the sexy stats that stick out to you. But when you watch him game in and game out, he leads the league in defending 3 3-point attempts. Like the way he blocks the ball really well, but the way that he switches on screens and can stay with guards laterally and affect their shot from the 3-pointer has been just phenomenal. Obviously, I'm not mentioning Mitchell because it's pretty obvious. I think Garland was a worthy all-star, but I also find it hard to take it away from somebody like Halliburton. I'm not saying, what I'm saying is in a vacuum, I think Garland is having an all-star season. I just have, in order to say that he deserves it, I have to take somebody away from it. And it's hard for me to do that. So I'm not taking anything away from Halliburton and saying he shouldn't be in there.
Sure.
But Garland is having an all-star level season, which is great to see. Bobby, I mean, I think really just to answer your question, it's just, finally having an offensive guy on the roster like Mitchell who can shoulder those loads, because Darius Garland, I think, is the closest player we've seen to a Chris Paul in a long time. And what I mean by that is he doesn't want to go out there and go for 30 every night. He did last year because he was basically forced into that position as the best offensive player on the roster. Right. And he can get his shot at any moment. And I'm not comparing their games saying he is Chris Paul, but take Chris Paul 14 years ago and modernize it to today's NBA. And that's exactly who Darius Garland is.
That's an interesting perspective of him.
Yeah. And they're a fun team to watch. They're young. They're on the come up. I don't think the goal this year is to get to the NBA Finals. They have an absolute glaring need at the 3 position. Getting a buyout guy like Danny Green, who's playing tonight, that's great, but that's still not what you're looking for. It feels a little bit. Okoro has come on a little, starting to hit that corner 3. He's been a phenomenal defender, but what the Cavs really need is a 3-and-D wing. They have a great young core, and I just want to see them continuously develop. And again, we had just talked about the Kings trade where we were throwing dirt on that trade last year for giving up Halliburton like they did. That's played out pretty well for both sides. It's a rare situation that you see that, and you're seeing it between Utah and Cleveland as well.
Yeah, I like it. I think that I look at Cleveland's roster. I think I agree with you. I think there's certainly a stretch, 2-3 spot there that they need to fill in, and that's a piece, right? So you're not talking about a team that's missing a lot where, I look at a lot of teams in the NBA and it's such a large, obvious glaring need that it prevents them from winning close games, but the Cavs still find their way to get into a close game and come out on the other side of the ball. And obviously we talked about Evan Mobley. I know you feel the same way, Aaron. I'm a huge Jared Allen fan. I love what he does. I love
Jared Allen.
I love what he does for basketball. He still kind of protects the big man. That's almost gone in the NBA now. It's not really a relevant position anymore. He is your quintessential. Give me the ball 10 feet in. I'm going to dunk it a bunch of times, but I'm also going to grab you 10 to 12 boards and I'm going to block a few shots. I think with what Cleveland does, their recipe right now requires that. And if you're not going to have a stretch 3 that covers the perimeter and kind of is your kind of all in one, you have to have guys like Mobley and Allen on the floor together a lot to protect your baseline and then protect your 12 feet in. So I agree with that. I watch them a lot now. Obviously, living in Columbus, that is our basketball market. So I watch a lot of Cavs games now. I watch them very early in the morning, but I'm watching them as I'm, trying to sweat out beer or whatever at the gym. But I've come to really enjoy watching the dynamic that they have on the floor because it's a really smooth chemistry. And the NBA is kind of clunky sometimes when you look at a team with young talent. Like I watch the Pacers too. It gets really clunky on the floor for them at times, depending on who's out there, because there's not really defined roles. But it seems like Cleveland as a whole has really found some good defined roles for their team. And, the East is kind of top heavy right now. And it's another one. It could flux here in the next couple of years, depending on what Boston and Milwaukee does for their future. So, we could be talking about the Cavs being a top team in the East if they keep it going in the next 2 years.
And before we move off of the Cavs, I just think they're a team to me that I don't necessarily think that they're going to do it, but they're a team that could threaten the Eastern Conference Finals this year. And I think their goal this season is to just build on the fact that you have this core and you want to see that continue to next season. And when you give up all those assets for Donovan Mitchell, I was actually happy to see them not go all in on this season at the trade deadline. They were one of 3 teams to not make a trade the week of the trade deadline, which was interesting to see. And I was actually happy to see that. But the one thing I want to mention about the Cavs before we move on, and Todd, I'm sure you agree with this, there just really isn't egos in the building. And that's a fun kind of roster to root for. To me, they are the Grizzlies of the East without the egos.
It's interesting. Yeah, I think Bickerstaff does a nice job of keeping that in check too. It seems like the players really respond to him well, and he's not a guy that fluffs for media either. He's a pretty straightforward guy when you watch a post game interview with him. So I think players respond to that. I say it a lot for football, and I feel the same way for basketball and baseball too. As those being the sports I know, that the generation of player has shifted a lot in the last 2 to 3 years. They don't respond to somebody being in their face and telling them they're a piece of shit and that they suck, and that the response to a mistake is no longer just running till you puke. It's getting next to a player and helping them understand where the mistakes are. Bickerstaff's a guy that, you listen to end game audio when they mic up Bickerstaff, it's him on the sidelines coaching players up even when the game's going on. So I think that's important. It's important to organizations are finally catching on to it. I think all of the head coaching hirings minus Frank Reich show that teams are kind of latching on to the idea that the younger the better for a head coach. And I think you're going to continue to see that in the NBA as well as we kind of progress through with the new generation of superstars as they enter in and get into those shoes.
They're fun to watch and they're easy to root for. So if you're not on the Cavs bandwagon, they're at the very least a great league pass team.
I think that the big thing too for somebody who's a casual basketball fan is that it needs to be 45 to 50 minutes of something that you can sit down and watch the ebbs and flows of the game and be like, oh, that guy, he's popping off. Who's that? Oh, let me look him up. Oh, that's Evan Mobley. What did he do? Oh, he's a second-year guy. Like, that's the casual basketball fans, their reintegration into the game, and they do a really nice job of that. And
who's this 6'11" guy that just switched and guarded a point guard?
Yeah. And I think that, the Nuggets on the other side of the ball, obviously being the number 1 team in the West, but outside of Jokic being who he is, they're a similar team to him and to watch. I like watching them play. I like watching.
Love them.
Yeah. I think
when Bobby was talking about Luka earlier, that I was like, no, Jokic is my number 1 player in the NBA right now.
Yeah. It's hard to argue against what he does because you're talking about how you rank a player. When he's not on the floor, it's a completely different dynamic for Denver, right? That's how you rank a player. That's how you determine what their success is on the team. But, God, I think the thing to me that shows is how important Jamal Murray was to that roster with him being out for such a long time and him coming back. He feeds off of Jokic being such a good distributor, and Jamal Murray is also an above average distributor. And then, Michael Porter Jr. has figured it out. He stayed healthy and, he seems to have gotten his game right. And that's really all they needed. They have Aaron Gordon that can jump from, almost half court to dunk it. It's worked out really well for them. They've gotten most of the pieces together. So like I said, the West is up for grabs and I need to see, I'm okay with seeing the yellow of the Nuggets in there. I just don't want to see any gold, any West Coast gold. That's where I'm at.
So obviously midseason, who are your guys' mid-season Eastern and Western Conference Finals teams?
Ooh.
If you had to pick right now, who's going to be there?
I'm taking the Nuggets out of the West. I think it's their turn. I am just so high on Jokic this year, and
he looks good.
They're just playing like they have a 5-game lead. In the West. Dark horse out of the West, I still kind of like the Clippers a little bit. I think I don't trust them at all. because of the load management crap.
Yeah.
But I also remember rooting for the Cavs when LeBron came back the second time, where it didn't matter. Just give us the 4 seed and we'll see in the finals, kind of deals. And in the East, it really is a 2-man sack race between Boston and Milwaukee. It's what do you like more?
Yeah.
I'm gonna take Milwaukee. I saw Giannis in the playoffs last year look unbeatable against the Celtics. And I know the Celtics ultimately won that series, but ask any Boston fan and they'll tell you they were terrified. They have still Drew Holiday just last night in a game that, hey, Boston was out a lot of guys, but I don't know that I've ever seen a better defender in the NBA than Drew Holiday. I don't think he gets his roses enough. And the whole Drew Holiday, Giannis, Middleton combination, we really haven't seen a lot this year.
Middleton's coming off the bench now. He's a 6th man for Milwaukee to bring in fresh legs for scoring.
He wasn't healthy last year either.
No.
I'm going to take the Bucks because Giannis got his rest last year.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm actually gonna. I think it's gonna actually end up being Phoenix and Milwaukee again. That's where I'm going right now.
Phoenix is a good call. We should talk about because we haven't talked about the Durant trade.
Yeah, so I think that just with what they are, obviously prior to Kevin Durant's arrival, who still I believe hasn't played yet.
He hasn't.
Yeah, so obviously Devin Booker is what he is, Mr. Consistent, averaging 26.8 points a game. He does that every single year. Never higher, never lower. That's pretty much his year-over-year average. Max contract DeAndre Ayton has become a number 1 pick, right? You go out and get him as your number 1 overall draft pick. You expect results. It took him a couple years, but he's now a nightly 2010 guy, 25-15 guy. That's exactly what they needed. And then you obviously still have the veteran experience of CP3, and you have Payne over there. I just think with the addition of Kevin Durant, who maybe the best mid-range shooter of all time, you've kind of checked all your boxes there. Giving up Bridges hurts, but the return on that is that you get a guy that can win the game for you all 4 quarters. Whereas I don't know if Bridges has that 7th gear that Kevin Durant has to just turn it on and be a pure scorer. So
great piece though. When we were talking about the Cavs and what they're missing, if I could have Mikal Bridges, that would be literally a puzzle piece fit.
Look, I think the Nets too, obviously they're the ones that were impacted by this trade with Durant and Kyrie Irving. They did the same thing 3 or 4 years ago before they tried to build the super team. It didn't work. We're watching them build foundational pieces again. I think Bridges is a guy that can, in the right scenario, where this is the right scenario for him, where he's going to get to shoot 20 plus times, he'll take full advantage of it. He'll show what he could do with the rock, but you're just going to get to see them build and trade and acquire what they need to get back to being in the top 5 in the East again. They're still there right now. Obviously I think things change, but there's a couple years away again to me from being a team that can be a contender in the East.
I love what they did at the trade deadline. I absolutely love it. And I'll explain why. What is every team asking for? 3 and D wing. Yeah, right. No, they're asking for 3 and D wings. The Nets have all of them, including the king piece, which is Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
That is their entire roster. Is guys that are 6'7", can knock down the corner 3 and play plus defense. They're going to make out with 5 to 6 first-round picks by moving those guys over the next 2 years.
Yeah, because so I'm looking at the roster now. So Mikal Bridges, that's like you said, that's your centerpiece of that.
Royce O'Neal. Go ahead. You go. Go ahead. Sorry.
Cameron Johnson, right? That's another guy that's an above-average defender. Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal. And they obviously have Cam Thomas and they have Edmund Sumner, 2 above
even Ben Simmons,
scoring.
man.
yeah. Who knows what's going to happen there? But they're not. And I think Nick Claxton, call him what he is. He's an actual real center. And who was it? And Jarrett Allen was that guy for Brooklyn when they were rebuilding and they made their push in the East before they tried to put the super team together. So I think we're just watching. Yeah, I think we're watching them try to put the thing together again. And you're right. You have 3 guys there that we just talked about that easily bring you first round picks back. That teams like the Jazz and the Thunder have a plethora of to give to you to give those pieces back. So yeah, like I said, I think 2 years you're watching them be a top 3 team in the East again.
Yeah.
No, when you had brought it up, you said Kevin Durant was the best mid-range shooter of all time. Did you hear that stat or see that stat? There's been 3 times in NBA history, minimum 250 attempts per season that somebody has shot over 55% from mid-range. And Kevin Durant is the only human to do it.
He did it 3 times.
And he's done it 3 times.
I think it would even be like closest second, maybe like Duncan.
Yeah, it has to be.
I'm trying to even guess who would be like next on that list.
Yeah, maybe, right? Because I mean, yes. So that is a stat that I found from. It's actually JJ Redick that provided that stat. Believe it or not,
JJ Redick. That's right. I saw that.
It does. I mean, it checks out. He's a Duke guy. He's very
big JJ Redick fan over here.
Gross.
I like JJ Redick, man.
I've always enjoyed JJ.
He has done it
but I'm not a UK fan. So
from being a guy who graduated college in 2009 and watching JJ Redick's entire career and now post career, he's kind of like Justin Timberlake, where it's like, you had to do a lot to make me like you, and somehow you did it. You know what I mean?
Nope.
I don't get those vibes from JT at all.
JT was like from in sync, like a boy band. Like I don't respect him. No, these are legitimate, talented, fucking triple threat.
Here's the thing. I'm never gonna give JJ Redick a compliment because I'm a Kentucky fan, right? That's against my. That's against my. I could physically vomit if I said something nice about him. It would make me ill.
Tom Brady went to Michigan. And I can still say he's the greatest football player of all time.
It's not there for me, man.
Be an adult, Todd. Okay, take your blinders off.
I can't. They're on. They're permanently on for Duke basketball. I'm sorry. I just can't. I can't move around that.
Will you agree that he was one of the best shooters coming off screen?
I will agree that he was a good shooter. Yes.
That's probably about as good as we're gonna get, Aaron.
I will agree that he was a good shooter, and all throughout his entire time as a basketball player at college and NBA, I watched him shoot the ball very well. That's the nicest thing I could say about him. And he's very intelligent.
I would say he had a much longer and better career than I thought he was ever going to have in the NBA coming out of college.
He found his niche in the NBA. He came into the NBA at a perfect time where scorers, not off the ball scorers, became necessary as secondary and not primary.
Yeah,
because
he didn't have the best start either.
No, he struggled. He openly admits that too. He struggled early on in the NBA because he didn't have the work ethic to be there. But I think that you look at what he was, right, and what the NBA was at that point in time. It was a lot of, run the baseline, pick and roll, get open, right? The Reggie Miller era of basketball, and then the NBA shifted to its dribble drive as your primary, and then the guy that can kind of move around without the ball becomes your second option. And JJ Redick just fit perfectly into that. Those years with the Clippers where he had 15 points a night because he got to shoot 7 or 8 threes. It worked for him very well. He made a whole career out of that. So, yeah, he was a good shooter when he played.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, no, I mean, I like your pick of the Suns coming out of the West. I think it's going to be Nuggets Suns. I think you hit that nail on the head. It's going to be interesting to see how Chris Paul and Devin Booker and Durant, how they all share the workload.
They want to win.
I don't know kind of what that dynamic looks like. Yeah, I would love to just see like Chris Paul just turn into like John Stockton and just start dishing the ball out to the open man, and and Aiden just tearing it up inside. And then obviously you got your shooters in the wings and Booker and Durant, and it has the ability to be a very beautiful thing to watch.
I think on average it's like 24 games a team after the All-Star break. Like it's not in the middle, perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Don't sleep on the Warriors, guys. If Steph Curry gets healthy again, like we're gonna do it every year.
Yeah, that's the problem though, is that I think his timetable's kind of off.
They're 11 games back right now.
They're the 9 seed right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And they've given him a post All-Star break return, but it's not really finite. So right. If it's any more than a week after the All-Star break, you're stretching it down to the wire, because I don't think he comes back and plays 35, 40 minutes again, too.
Sure, but the teams in front of him are the Pelicans and Timberwolves.
Yeah,
I don't think Zion's coming back either.
I don't think he'll come back at all this year.
I don't trust when we were talking about surprises, I almost wanted to mention the Timberwolves, but I couldn't because I thought they were going to be terrible, because I thought the Gobert trade was the worst trade in NBA history.
That's fair.
It's bad.
I'm not even being hyperbolic.
They have no cat right now either for them, which sucks. No Karl Anthony Towns. That hurts them significantly.
So the Warriors, because here's the thing, there's going to be a 7 and 8 seed. There's a play-in to get there.
Yeah, you're right.
But I'm just saying.
Yeah, they're not out of it. I mean, if they sneak in, they're always going to be a contender, just because of who they are. And
the 1 and 2 seed will not want to play them.
Oh God, no.
That's not. It'll turn into it'll be a great headline for SportsCenter every morning, but I'll be sick. I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm sick of it.
I don't want them to win. I'm just saying I wouldn't sleep on them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And then you obviously said Celtics Bucks earlier, Aaron, for the East, and I don't see any way in where there's any two different teams in the finals in the East.
I think Philly is the best.
Maybe. I don't know, man. The Celtics, I've watched a lot of their games this year, and they are unbelievably good. They're one of the most complete teams, but Giannis is Giannis, and Giannis is going to do his shit. And he continues.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say he continues to get better every year and expand his game. He just continues to get more terrifying as the years progress. We're still in I would say the early stages of Giannis's prime. And we still have a lot to go. So I'm going to be interested to see how he continues to develop that mid-range to that 3-point game. If he can really get that 12 to 18 foot jump shot down with some moves, like he's going to be unbelievable.
The thing with Philly, and the only reason I'm mentioning them is because I hate the way that they play it. But for a playoff series, for a team that gets to the line that often, for guys, Embiid is averaging over 31 points a game. Harden's averaging over 10.5 assists a game. Like the way that they play, keeping everybody healthy. And I actually like them trading Thibault because I think he was a piece, but I don't think he was the right piece for this team because they needed a little bit more offensive play. They got McDaniel from Charlotte. I think that was a nice little move for them that is flying under the radar a little bit. The only reason I think Philly deserves to be at least in the conversation, not that I think that they will win it, but just the conversation, is because the way that they can take over a playoff series by driving to the rim, getting to the free throw line, and just getting kind of some cheap wins, because they're a boring team to watch. Like I hate watching. I'm watching it right now. And I hate watching them play because it's just foul, 2 shots, foul, and that over a 7-game series can be very demoralizing.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm just going to throw in my sleeper for the East for you guys. And this is just based off.
I love it.
No, it's based off of one trade that they made. And it's actually the New York Knicks, specifically them going out and getting Josh Hart. Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart were teammates at Villanova. They have incredible chemistry. You have two guys that play a very similar position that could both score 30 on any given night. They've won 5 of their last 6. Obviously, Julius Randle is what he is too. The Knicks are a team that aren't really missing much either, and I could see them making a slight push, and obviously RJ Barrett. I think this is the first year where he's kind of found his stuff in the NBA too. It took him he kind of had a slow burn in his integration into being an NBA player, and now they have 4 guys that could score. That could be your leading scorer. It could alternate through a 4-game series who scores 30 a night, and all 4 of those guys are very difficult to defend, and 3 of the 4 of those guys are very good at defending the other side of the ball. So I could see them making a weird run in the Eastern Conference, and it's going to feel funny, but you're going to see the Knicks win a series, and it could be a sweep, and you're like, whoa, where the hell did this come from? But Josh Hart's a very talented scorer.
Spike Lee would lose his mind.
I think he was underutilized in a very bad Portland team. They really kind of threw all their money into Simons, the G League phenom, the Ignite phenom Simons, and didn't really put their money into Josh Hart. He's the guy that could really go out. I mean, in his time in Villanova, he was, unstoppable. So,
but he's been on like 3 teams since then.
Right. No, I follow what you're saying.
He's a guy that moves the needle for me, or I guess solidifies a championship team for me. Like if Josh Hart got traded to the Bucks or the Nuggets or something like that, that solidifies the roster for me. It does not move the needle for me on a fringe team. I'm not discounting everything you just said, but I like Josh Hart a lot. I think he's, again, the same thing. You want wings, 2 and 3 guys who can 3 and D. That's what the NBA has turned into. Ball handlers, mobile bigs, 3 and D. He certainly fills a role in that regard. I'm just a little bit worried about that Knicks roster as a whole. Corey just mentioned in the chat here, Brunson is playing great right now. Again, another deserving All-Star where I think he got the All-Star. No, Siakam. I'm sorry. He got the injury starter designation. But anyways, I like a lot of that roster. Do I trust Julius Randle? Do I trust Brunson? Do I trust guys who, Brunson had some great minutes last year for the Mavs, but he was in a definitely different role than he was in Dallas last year, where, it was kind of just being on Luka.
He was supplemental.
Right.
But that's how he got paid, right? Because you got to remember when Luka went down, when Dallas was in the playoffs, Jalen Brunson turned into a 40-point guy.
What I will say to your credit is, especially with the NBA, there's only so many dark horses that you can really pick, right? And I don't think the Knicks are a bad choice by any means. I don't trust that roster just yet, but I see it. And again, there's only so many teams you can actually pick from.
Right.
Let's see here. So a little bit All-Star weekend this weekend. 2023 participants for the dunk contest. Kenyon Martin Jr., Mac McClung.
You know what's crazy?
Trey Murphy III and Jericho Sims.
Do you guys
Mac
remember?
McClung is like a G leaguer, right?
Yeah, he's actually on the Sixers now. He's a 2-way guy on the Sixers now.
Okay. Yeah.
They specifically made sure that he got rostered up for the dunk contest. His is all based on old Ball is Life high school basketball highlights.
Yep.
That's all.
I remember those.
Yeah, that Mac McClung's whole, because this is a guy that didn't even stick in college. He had to go to 2 different colleges and then left and then didn't get drafted and has been kind of teetering his way through the NBA. Obviously got some time with the Lakers. Blah, blah, blah. But it's all a social media ploy, because he has a niche following that watch all those videos of him over and over and over and over again. And those people will watch the dunk contest because he's got the ability to make some pretty unique. He's a dunker for sure, but it's stale, boys. And unfortunately, I just don't think anybody cares about it anymore.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Pro Bowl.
Yeah. And the crazy part is that Kenyon Martin's son is in the dunk contest. And I specifically remember watching Kenyon Martin a lot, being from Cincinnati when he was on that Bearcats roster in the late 90s.
Right.
And now his son is in the fucking dunk contest. And that's my period on, oh shit, we are getting a little old.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the 3-point contest should be a little bit more exciting. You got Halliburton, Hero, Buddy Hield, Kevin Huerter.
2 Pacers you just listed there.
Yeah.
The highlights.
Halliburton. Dame, Laurie Markkinen, Anthony Simmons, and Tatum. So that should be a little bit more fun to watch. But
yeah, the NBA has to find a way to incentivize people to enter the dunk contest because it is a great product that is dying.
Yeah, you got to get the big names in there. Like the fact that LeBron never did a dunk contest was an absolute shame.
He'd do it for $5 million for charity.
He would.
He would do it, especially if you shamed him for not doing it. and I'm not saying the NBA doing it, but if it leaks out the fact that LeBron James turned down $5 million for charity to not do this. Now, not now because he's too old and that's a rightful.
That's what I'm saying.
You know what I mean? Like
that time has passed.
Right.
Yeah.
That would have been insane to watch him like in his prime where he could just get up and jump out. I mean, he can still jump out of the gym, but not like he used to.
Here's the thing: it's not just on the NBA. Who was it? Like Sprite or whoever like sponsors it. Like there's money that can be. You do it for
LeBron.
charity.
Is LeBron still a Sprite spokesperson, or is that gone too?
I think he still is. I just meant who sponsors the.
Yeah,
it's been
Sprite.
Kia. I know Sprite because they're the ones who have the numbers everyone holds up.
Yeah.
Like every year we used to look forward to it, man. Like the Vince Carter years, the Jason Richardson years. Like it was something like dunk contest. Like, what are they gonna do this year? Like the Blake Griffin years. I mean, he had some cheesy ones, but yeah, it just used to be so much fun to watch. And now it's just kind of like I don't care if I just go to sleep or watch something else.
And you don't need necessarily all stars to do it because like one of the best dunk contests I've ever seen was the Zach LaVine, Aaron Gordon.
Yeah,
they weren't all stars. They are now. Or Aaron Gordon isn't, but he's still a factory piece on the best roster or the best team in the NBA. But you just kind of need guys who are like on the come up, not necessarily solidified stars, but guys I know. I'm trying to think of who would be a really good Anthony Edwards would be a perfect example of somebody right now to be in the dunk contest.
Yeah.
Why is he not in it? What are we doing to get him in the dunk contest?
That's a good point.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think the players aren't incentivized for that anymore. And it used to be like a badge of honor to be able to participate in that. I just think that it's not as advertised as it once was either.
No.
Yeah, Corey brings up a good one.
Have we done all of the dunks? Is that the problem?
Maybe so. Maybe there are no more dunks to be made.
I don't believe that because what's that one white dude, Jordan Klingon?
That dude's blue hair.
Yeah, the dude. That dude's amazing.
That's one of my favorite.
Get that guy to come and do the dunk contest against some of these professionals.
Sure. Give me Jalen Green. You know what I mean? Like give me young, athletic, high draft capital guys that everyone knows that have NBA heads.
At least a 45+ inch vert.
Right. There's two guys that were drafted or are products of first round picks for the Pistons that could very easily do it. And Ivy and Jalen Durant.
Ivy would be interesting.
Yeah, those are two guys that have the ability to change what they're doing midair, and they're not even a part of it. And do they even still do the rookie sophomore game? Is that still a thing that they do? Okay.
Now they do it like
it's geographical.
Pretty sure,
now, right?
I would say like USA World, which I kind of like. I think that's interesting, especially when you take a look at the the demographics of the NBA. But
it's changed a lot too.
Yeah, that's all fun. Honestly, the All-Star game, I really like. I actually like watching the All-Star game a lot, as long as you can understand the fact that you're not watching this game to watch defense.
Right.
But because they've added the Elam ending, fourth quarter is dope.
Yeah.
And how do they do that? The winning team gets money for charity.
Yeah. Matters. These guys care about that shit, man. They care about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a good look. The only thing I didn't see were the skills challenge participants. I was like the skills challenge for me, I think that's like that's taken over the dunk contest. It's like 3-point contest, skills challenge.
I'd say three. I say the 3-point contest has taken over because you still get worthy participants.
No, that's what I'm saying. I was like the 3-point contest is my favorite to watch, then the skills challenge, and then the dunk contest. Like dunk contest is like my least favorite thing to watch now. Who are the? Did I miss it? Who are the skills challenge guys? I don't know.
I haven't seen those either. I don't really care about the skills competition.
Whatever.
It's a bunch of guys doing drills at half speed.
Right.
It was cool when Steve Nash did it because he just was
Yeah.
he was so consistently great at every one. He never missed. Him and
Stoudemire?
Brandon Knight.
Oh,
They
I was
just
thinking
didn't
of the
miss.
dunk contest. Never mind.
Yeah, no, they're talking skills challenge. Those guys just didn't
You remember when
miss.
Steve Nash did the header for
Yeah. See that's it.
This is
But that's the
different
thing.
time,
You're
like-
still getting like, I don't even know if Stoudemire was like a bona fide all-star at that time, but he was still like, he was right there, you know?
Right.
That would have been that would have been when he was on Phoenix, right?
Oh yeah.
Yes. That was very early in his career. So yeah, I think he was.
Give me a guy like that. I said Anthony Edwards, Jalen Green would be a good one. I'm trying to think of some others that would be like right there. I think Corey said Paulo in the chat. Yeah, that would be good. He's not as much of like a freak athlete as he is just an overwhelming presence. But there's a lot of guys. Obi Toppin, I think, did it like the last couple of years, like that.
Yeah,
Get him back.
He's perfect because that's exactly what he did at Dayton. That's what made him so great was his ability to be such a presence to the lane, right? And I think he won a dunk contest his rookie year.
Did he win it? Yeah.
I think he won it. I don't think he won it last year. I think he won it 2 years ago.
That's who I need in it.
That's fair.
Alex Caruso. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean that would be fun to watch, man. That he can get up a little bit, you know.
He gets a little Tykes hoop. Right? Just doing fucking.
Oh shit!
That'd be like me doing a dunk contest. That's about all I can do. Oh shit!
Boys, is that a podcast?
I think
it might be a podcast.
I think that's a wrap, gentlemen.
Man, we said we were going to cut a little early, and we still got
keep
about
it
an hour
short.
and 50 minute in.
Because then somebody makes a dumb comment, and you're like, "Well, I need to comment on that for sure."
You've opened up another can of worms, sir. We're going to be here for 6 hours.
I love.
I appreciate us getting into the NBA a little bit, and
I love the NBA. I'm excited to kind of dive in a little bit. We're gonna get
we're gonna get to split some time on this now on Wednesday nights.
Yeah,
that's exciting. Obviously, you and Corey introduced the Generous Degenerates podcast Saturday night. That's going to be a reoccurring thing moving forward as we continue to build ground. Bobby and I are going to go back to the roots of Rally Towel Sports and get back on the baseball podcast and get back to the foundation of the pick your all-time great team, get into the deep dives of the rule changes. That's something that obviously, is a big part of baseball. Bobby and I are going to try to get into that and dig into that and share our opinions on that. And more content to come. But, I think the big thing for anybody that's watching / listening in the future is that you're going to get to hear and see more of us more nights a week here.
A little bit wider range of topics as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Not just football.
Nope. We're going to try to cover as many sports as we can, as many topics as we can. That's the goal.
Absolutely. All right, boys. Well, appreciate the time tonight, chat. Thanks for swinging through. You guys have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy All-Star Weekend. And we'll see you guys next week for another episode of Dingers, Dunks, and Drives.